Well, thank you all so much for joining me live, or if you're watching this back on replay, thank you so much for registering and attending our How To Tuesday of the month. We are talking about literature reviews this month. So I'm so excited to be here with you guys. If I haven't met you already, my name is Camille Abdel-Jawad. I'm an assistant professor in the library instruction and outreach librarian here at Park University. And I am just so thrilled to be here with you all to talk a little bit about the literature review. We actually did this in our How To Tuesday series last semester, but it was highly requested because this is a huge a component to a lot of research papers for students, no matter what discipline you're in, right? This is a really great thing to master right off the bat so that you can write really effective literature reviews throughout your college career here at Park University and beyond. So a few things, we're going to go through what is a literature review and how do I write one. We're also going to talk about the difference between a literature review and an annotated bibliography. This is a big thing for a lot of students. They're not always exactly sure, what is the difference between a lit review and an annotated bibliography or an annotated bib, right? These two things are similar in the essence that they both incorporate utilizing outside research or resources, yet they're different. They have different purposes. So we're going to kind of go over what the difference is between those two and how they overlap and coincide, but also how they're different. We're also going to discuss some resources because we're here today together and there will be time for questions at the end. But I also want to give you guys plenty of resources to get assistance and help as you need it along the way. So we'll kind of jump in here. I think we're actually going to go ahead and start by discussing, what is a literature review and why do we have them? Why do our instructors assign them? So I'm going to do a little Zoom poll for us. I'm going to launch that. So if you want to follow along and you are joining us live here today, you can answer my poll. It's just one question, and I want to hear what you guys think. Why do we write literature reviews? So I have 4 options for us. One is to provide citations for the sources I'll be using in my research. 2, to see what kind of research is out there on my topic. 3, because our instructors make us, very, very mean of them, or to get an A on my assignment. So it looks like most of us have responded, and you guys are right. It's to see what kind of research is out there on our topic. That is the goal of our literature review and why we write them. So thanks so much to everyone who participated here. We'll end that. So, this is a really interesting topic for me because I love being able to introduce students to what literature reviews or lit reviews are really for, because it's a really important part of your process as a researcher. So there's 3 main parts of the literature review, or 3 main purposes. The first is to survey the literature, as in look through all of the literature, look through all of the resources that are currently available or out there on your topic, right? So if I am studying how social media affects mental health, we'll kind of come back to this topic later. But if that's my topic, I want to go out and I want to find all of the studies that have been done on this topic. I want to read about the conversation, right? We talk a lot about this in the library. What is the scholarly conversation? The scholarly conversation is really researchers or professionals in the field. Maybe they're professors, maybe they work for a company that does research. Whoever it is, these authors in the field, they're having a conversation with each other, right? They're saying, okay, I did a literature review and this is what I found. And I am advancing this field by contributing my own research. And then maybe someone comes alongside them and says, oh, actually, I used their research and I took it one step further and I investigated this part of it. We call this the scholarly conversation because it allows us to be in conversation with each other. It allows us to introduce us to a community of scholars. And when we are doing our own literature review, we're joining that conversation, right? We are saying we are also researchers, so we need to see what's being talked about out there. What is being done? What research has been done? Where are there gaps in the research? All of that. So you would, in order to survey the literature, you would want to check out the library databases, see what materials we have that are on your topic. We'd also maybe want to check out ebooks or physical books or Google Scholar. There's plenty of resources out there on how to find the information. The next step on that, or the next purpose, is to read and connect, right? When we're writing a literature review, we've gone out and we found all the sources. Now we got to do the hard part. We got to read them, right? So your literature review is all about finding those resources and then going through and reading them and understanding what studies have been done, what does the research say, and finding connections between the different parts of the conversation. Just like we were talking about before, you're seeking out people who are in conversation with each other, the community of researchers or scholars in your discipline or in your topic. You're also doing that for the second part. You're going to read them and find those connections between those resources. And then you're going to synthesize. So these are all the parts or all the steps to write a literature review, right? So you found all the literature, you've read all the literature, and you've made some notes. And now you're going to put it into a coherent paper or section of paper. It's not a list of sources, right? It's not your references. It is an actual synthesized paper. It's an actual analysis of what is out there on your topic, not a list of sources. You're going to talk about the conversation on your topic and how these sources connect, are in conversation with each other, maybe how they disagree, and all kinds of things like that. So those are the 3 steps to writing your literature review. We'll talk more about that second or that third step of how to synthesize, how to actually present the literature review in a little bit. So how do we organize our literature review, right? We know that we need to find sources. We've found our sources, we've read our sources, but now what? This kind of synthesized category is a little bit vague, right? How do we actually take our sources and put them into our literature review? Just like any other paper, you need to have some sort of structure, right? If I'm writing an essay on, I don't know, if we take our English 105 or English 106 classes, you have some sort of structure, right? You're going to make like argument 1, argument 2, argument 3, conclusion making. Whatever your paper looks like, your literature review also needs to have some kind of organization within it. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can do this, and there's no right or wrong way. You would want to think about your topic and what makes the most sense for your topic. So for example, you could do it chronologically. If there has been advancements in your topic or in your discipline over time, it would be good for you to write it chronologically. That could be an option, right? Here is where, we've started, and here's where we are now, right? That could be a really interesting arc of your literature review. You could also do it by theory, if there's different theories related to your research topic. If you could do it thematically, if there's different themes related to your topic. If you're going to break down your bigger topic into different subsets, that could also work. There's all kinds of ways to organize your literature review. The one thing you want to make sure you do is you pick a way to organize it. It's not enough to say, okay, here are all of my sources, I'm just going to kind of randomly throw them in there, right? This is a mini paper within your paper, or for some assignments, this is your paper, right? Sometimes it's at the top, you might do a literature review and then do further analysis below. But for sometimes this is the assignment for your instructor. They want you to just do a literature review. So this should be organized. It should be coherent. It should make sense. There should be purpose behind why you're putting things in each category or each paragraph or each arrangement. And it really will depend on your topic, on how you arrange that information. There's a lot more information about how to organize via, organization styles on our library guide, and I will show you that at the end. So if you want to learn more about different ways you can organize, you can do so independently after this conclusion. Okay, so here's an example for us. Again, taking our topic of how does social media affect teenagers' mental health. There's 3 different overall themes that I found in the literature when I went out and surveyed it, right? Again, remember our very first step before we make any themes or any ideas of what our literature review might be, we need to go read the literature. We need to go find the literature. So let's say I did that and I found 3 themes within the literature. Okay, I went out and I looked at all the sources and I found that all the sources are kind of looking at 3 main ideas. Number 1, that there were increased feelings of anxiety overall. Maybe all the studies that I read saw, okay, definitely there's increased feelings of anxiety. And they also found that teenagers who use a lot of social media have a lack of connection in real life with real peers, whereas they find connection online instead. And then all the other papers also found that there was diminished self-worth and negative body image. Okay, I would have determined that by, again, taking those notes and finding the connections or the themes within all of the papers that I read through. And again, we're just looking for different themes or different ways to connect and find connections between the literature that's out there. So this is an example of arranging it or organizing it thematically. I've identified 3 themes here. And if I go ahead and think about, okay, how am I going to outline this? This is an example, okay? You might want to create a literature review outline just like you would a paper outline. Because again, you want to be really intentional with it. You want to make sure that you are being intentional. Okay, this is where I'm putting it. And that makes sense because that's in conversation with this source. And this source is in conversation with this source. Okay, this is an example of an outline. And these are all fake sources, and these are all fake themes and conclusions. But this is just an example for you guys. So again, I found those 3 themes, and maybe within theme number 1, I also noticed that there was a direct correlation between time spent online and increased anxiety. And I know this because 2 of my sources pointed to this. So I have my overall theme. And then below that, I have kind of a sub point that I want to make sure I hit in my literature review, the same as a paper. And then below that, I have the 2 sources that directly talk about this that I want to point to or reference in my paper. Then I have another sub point, again, under that umbrella of theme number 1. Anxiety of Gen Z teens overall has increased, which is correlated with increase of social media usage. Apparently I wrote that, right? So this is we're going to point to another source underneath this one. Then we're going to look at theme number 2. Teens struggle with social anxiety and find it easier to connect online. Here's 2 more sources that I'm going to point to that I found in the literature review, that I found when I was surveying the literature. This is also an opportunity to identify gaps, right? What's a gap in the literature? What hasn't been studied? What is something that you have questions about that you cannot find elsewhere, that you cannot find articles that talk about this in depth? That would be a gap. And you would want to identify that in your outline because you will also want to identify that in your literature review. If there are gaps and there are opportunities for the conversation to continue, maybe you want to fill that gap, maybe you want to do research. That's a great way to do that. So let's say the gap that I identified in my literature review is, what about teens who find social connections online? Does social media have any benefits to teenagers' mental health? So maybe I'm not finding any resources on that. So that would be a great way to incorporate our gaps. Again, just as a reminder, the literature review, the main idea, the main point is to say, here is all of the resources that are available on my topic, and here's what they say. And this is why they are in conversation or in connection with each other. or here's what they're not saying, or here are questions that are left unanswered. All of that is valid to include in your literature review. So we've kind of walked through, what does a literature review do? How do I start writing one, right? We're going to find the sources, we're going to read and analyze them, and then we're going to synthesize or connect them together. We've talked about the outline, but what does the literature review actually look like in practice, right? Because we can take an outline and then we need to go and actually write the literature review. So what we want to do here is think about, okay, how do we actually synthesize this information together? And we have full sample papers available on our library guide for you to look at, to model what this looks like in practice. How do I actually synthesize or connect that conversation together? But this is just like one paragraph of a literature review, so you can kind of see what that looks like. Again, oftentimes in literature reviews, we're going to think about, okay, how are we going to break it down? In our case, we broke it down thematically, again, with our example. But how do we weave all of the sources that we've gathered together and summarize what those sources are saying and how they're contributing to the greater conversation? So for example, this example talks about how Foucher, Jackson, and Cassidy performed a study on some students, and here were the results of them. That's really key information that you'll want to include. If your literature, if your source that you've pulled has an actual study, you need to tell your audience or your literature review, and your literature review need to write, what was the study? What did they find, right? And how does that contribute to the greater conversation of your research topic? That's what we're doing here. It's not, again, just putting a citation in or saying this is a source. We really need to read, analyze, and understand the source and their findings, and then put it all together in a review of literature. So that's the summary of how to write a literature review. Again, we'll have time for questions at the end, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise a hand. I'm now going to move into the difference between a literature review and an annotated bibliography. These are two very common assignments that your instructors may assign to you, right? They may say, okay, please write me a literature review, or they might say, we're working on a research project. Let's do an annotated bibliography or annotated bib. So what's the difference between these two? Because they both incorporate sources, right? So both of these resources or both of these assignments are going to review the literature, right? So it's kind of counterintuitive. Well, what's the difference? You'll need to find sources with Pirate Search or databases or Google Scholar, etc. They all involve outside sources. And they both provide context for what research exists, and they're both common assignments that you might be assigned. However, the main difference between a lit review and an annotated bibliography is that a lit review is a coherent standalone analysis essay, right? It's a full standalone thing. If you handed someone a lit review, they'd be able to read it from top to bottom and understand what's out there about your topic, what are the findings, what are the gaps, and how are these sources contributing to the conversation. This should also ideally include the full scope of your topic. So of course, you're never going to be able to find every single source on your topic, and you're not expected to, but you should be looking for the full scope. What are all of the perspectives? What are all of the advancements or findings that have been published on your topic? You should be looking for the full scope, not just picking and choosing things that might be relevant to what you're interested in, right? You should be actively seeking out voices or seeking out research that is, within the topic and that maybe you don't agree with or you have questions about. That's totally fine. And in fact, some of your sources in the lit review might disagree with each other. They might contradict each other, and that's okay, right? That is part of representing the conversation, not just picking and choosing sources. In contrast, an annotated bibliography is a series of citations followed by a paragraph that either summarizes or analyzes the source. This is oftentimes the first step in a research paper. So your instructor might ask you to show them what sources you're going to use in your research paper in the form of an annotated bibliography. This, again, is just a citation and a paragraph following it. It's not cohesive. It doesn't talk about how the sources are in conversation with each other. It's just a source and a little bit about it. So that's the biggest difference. You also likely won't have to represent the full scope of the topic. Your instructor might assign, okay, give me 10 citations in your annotated bibliography that you want to use in your research paper. So the onus or the burden is not on you to go out and find all of the perspectives and all of the information for a topic. It's more so just looking at what kinds of sources are relevant to this assignment rather than looking the full scope of the conversation on your topic. Awesome. So that's the difference. Again, annotated bibliography, just citations and paragraphs. A lit review is a full standalone analysis. It might be part of an essay or it might be its own thing. And again, just to kind of show you really clearly, again, the difference between these two, if you look on the left here, the review of literature is a full paragraph that incorporates and embeds the sources, talking about them and talking about how they're in conversation with each other. Whereas those annotated bibliography is, again, just that citation and a little bit about the source and maybe how you'll use it. There are full examples, again, of both the review of literature and the annotated bibliography on our website. And I will put a link to that and all of the resources in the chat right now, so you guys can follow along if you would like. All right, so the resources we have available to help, we would love to help you with this. We know that no matter where you're at, whether you've done many literature reviews or annotated bibliographies before, or you've never done them, this can be a wide range, right? We want to meet you where you're at. And if you need additional assistance after this workshop, we would love to help you here at the library. And here are some different resources we have to help you. So first of all, our Academic Success Center is awesome, and they are partnering with us. They actually provide free tutoring for all students, no matter if you're here on the Parkville campus or if you are a remote distance student. They do free tutoring both on Zoom and in person. So no matter where you are, they would love to come alongside you and support you in your paper writing. We have a whole writing center with tutors who are excited to help you. And they are experts on literature reviews, what you need to do, what you need to include, how to find that research, all of that good stuff. We also have a library guide, and I want to show that to you right now. So I gave you a link in the chat to the folder that has both the slides in here and these workshop resources. And these workshop resource links have links to all kinds of stuff, including the library guide, the example literature review, the example outlines, all of that good stuff, as well as the Academic Success Center, their writing help scheduling page, and how to get in touch with them. But if we go to our library guide, we have a whole guide on tools for academic writing. And this guide will allow you to go through and find lots of good information. But if you go to the second tab where it says academic writing and kind of just hover on it, there's two tabs, literature review and annotated bibliography. And these two tabs have so much more information than I can give you in 30 minutes today. So there's videos, there's information about what a literature review is and why we write them. There's tons of sample papers, 3 sample papers here, review tips, ways to organize, including templates. There's lots of fun ways you can do it, finding focus and organization, all kinds of good stuff on here. And again, this really will echo what we talked about today, but go in so much more depth if you need more assistance. Or if you're writing an annotated bibliography, we also have the exact same materials for that annotated bib. Again, videos, we have links, we have examples, all kinds of good stuff here. So this is a great resource. You're also welcome to contact us. We have librarians who are here and available to help you 24/7. And if you need help with the literature review, they can absolutely point you in the right direction. Our chat service is available 24/7, so you can contact us anytime. And you can do that through your individual help page. There's all kinds of information on here, how to get writing tutors, how to schedule an appointment with a writing tutor. And again, our chat box is available right there under that individual help tab. All right. And of course, ultimately your instructor is assigning the assignment and they can always help you as well. That's a really great resource that sometimes students underutilize. Your instructor will be glad to help you. We at the library would be so glad to help you. And the Academic Success Center is awesome and they would be glad to help you. So you have your pick of people that you can reach out to that are experts on literature reviews, annotated bibliographies, and writing. All right, so what questions do you guys have? You are welcome to raise your hand, unmute, put it in the chat, however you would like. I will take any questions you have and see where we go from there. I'll give us a few minutes.
Hello, I have a question.
Sure.
So I wonder, well, first I want to say thank you for doing this. I really appreciate this information. And so something that I wonder is, a literature review should include like the full scope of the conversation. So yeah. How can you feel confident that you have seen the full scope?
Yeah, that's a really great question, right? And don't feel so much pressure that you have to find every single source on it, because you never will, right? But you want to make sure that you're finding the most relevant and usually the biggest sources on this conversation. So something that you can do is you can find one source and then you can say, oh, that's really good. That's a great resource on my topic. Go down to their references. What sources did they use, right? And once you start finding a bunch of articles, you'll see that they're all in conversation with each other and they'll be citing the same sources. So that's a really great way to go through and check to make sure that you have found all the key players in our conversation. Again, you will never find every single article, nor should you, right? That would be extensive, but you want to make sure you find the full scope. So don't leave anything out. So if, again, we're thinking about our mental health topic, if you only found information about how mental health is affected by Snapchat, but you ignored all the other things, that's probably going to be a problem. You would want to make sure you found information for Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all the things, right? So making sure you have identified all of the prominent parts of your research question and where the research is, but don't put too much stress on trying to find every single thing. And again, looking at those references, looking at the citations and seeing, are you finding those commonly used citations will help point you in the right direction. They're in conversation with each other, so they're going to cite the same things. I hope that helps.
Do you have another webinar that goes through teaching students how to get appropriate literature?
That's a great question.
That's where I've struggled, is that, especially with one of the online classes I teach, is that I've put in links and I've tried to record little things, but then they're still bringing in a blog when they're supposed to be looking for a peer-reviewed journal article.
That's a great question. I don't have a webinar on that, but part of my whole job is to make things like that. So Jenny, you're an adjunct instructor. Okay, I will email you and we'll connect and we can work together on creating something like that.
I would love that, because I know it's not just me. I'm the program coordinator for exercise science, and our instructors at Gilbert struggle with the same thing, because especially at Gilbert, because they sometimes don't have some of the general studies before they actually get into the department classes, just with how Gilbert offers their classes different. And if
Right.
we could have something that we could build into our shells, I would be so appreciative.
I can absolutely do that for you. I'll chat with you. Are there any other questions that I could answer for folks today? All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining me today for our How To Tuesday series. Again, if you haven't joined us before, these are just quick 30-minute webinars on different topics that students are interested in, that faculty are interested in. So if you have any ideas of things you would like me to share on our How To Tuesday webinars, we do one a month. Please feel free to shoot me an email. I would love to hear from you. Or otherwise, if you just have questions that we didn't have time for today, if you need additional assistance, my email inbox is always open. I would be glad to work with you individually. I love working with students and faculty. It's my favorite part of my job. So please do not hesitate to reach out to me. You can email me, call me, or schedule a personal appointment with me, and we can go through anything that you need help with. And again, if you're an instructor and you want to chat more about resources or about how to find resources and encourage students to find resources, feel free to email me and we can set something up. And I'll stick around for a few minutes, but that is the end of our webinar. Thank you all so much for being here today and have a wonderful afternoon.